The NFL, it is such a big cultural event here in the United States. It's really now America's pastime. So according to your data, by the time the Super Bowl comes around in February of next year, more than half, 53% of Americans will have access to online sports betting. What does that trend in the return of football mean for the gambling stocks?
You know, it's been a busy 5.5 years since the U.S. legalized sports betting. You know, like you said, we're now to over 50% of the U.S. population with access to sportsbooks. So we have some of the legacy companies, you know, DraftKings and FanDuel. They've built up products over the last couple of years. You know, they've retained some of the highest market share within this sector. And then coming into football season, there are some new states that are entering the fray. You also have some new companies that are entering the fray. You know, Penn and ESPN, they announced a sportsbook agreement several weeks ago. And then other companies like Fanatics, they're looking to launch their sportsbook app this upcoming football season as well. So it's going to be a busy time. I think a lot of people are excited, and there's a lot to watch for in the next couple of weeks and months.
All right, I want to talk to you about some of the companies entering the space. But first, let's go to your top picks. What are your top picks for the space and why?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, there's a lot of new companies coming into this space. There's going to be a lot of marketing spend, promotions, just a lot of moving parts coming in the next couple of weeks and months. With that, you know, we still like some of the legacy companies, DraftKings, FanDuel, and its parent company, Flutter. We think that they have the time advantage, the product advantage to continue to dominate. You know, between those two companies, they have about 75% of the sports betting market share. And we just think that, you know, with all this kind of noise, they're going to be the ones to kind of come out this unscathed into next year. So we still like the bigger companies with bigger balance sheets. You know, those are the ones to watch. Another kind of derivative play off of the sports betting industry is a company called Genius Sports. They own the data rights to some of these leagues. They're the ones helping price some of these bets. So, you know, there are other ways to kind of play this sector, but we still think, you know, it's going to be an interesting time with, you know, some of these newer companies coming in.
You know, it's really interesting to hear you say legacy companies for an industry that's only been around for a few years, but clearly we have some legacy companies and some new players. So for investors that want to just invest in this space more broadly, give us a sense of some of the trends that are important, not only when it comes to tech, but by the way, I'm not a gambler. I don't gamble at all, but we have a few gamblers here on the staff. I'm not going to name any names. What do investors need to know about things like parlays and teasers? I hear people talking about that a lot in the office. Give us a sense of how that fits into the investment thesis for these stocks.
Yeah, so, you know, it's funny that I talk about legacy companies and we're only 5 years into it. But, you know, over the course of this 5 years, it's been all about who can open the acquisition funnel the most and who can get the most people on their platform. And the more important part is being able to retain these players with, to your point, some of these better product offerings. You know, the big product that we've seen over the last couple of years is the adoption of the parlay product that's adding multiple bets into one, adding multiple teams into one. It's a high risk, high reward. And we've seen that product really take off and take market share from traditional betting, such as straight betting. So, you know, for the company, for these operators, for these companies, it's higher margin, which means they're generating more revenue just given their higher risk, higher reward. But at the end of the day, the companies want to provide their customers with the best product. How many things you can log on to the app and see and do, and how easy it is to find some of these betting products. So, you know, it's really the technology part that, you know, it feels like every football season we enter into, we say this is going to be the best season for technology and for product. You know, I'm saying that again into this football season. I'm sure next year we'll say the same thing, but it's really about the evolution of being able to keep people on the platform, get them continuing to spend.
I just want to be clear. When you say it's a higher margin product for the gambling companies, that just means the house wins more often, right?
That is correct.
I think I'm going to have to explain that to a few of my colleagues. One last question before we let you go. According to your data, average NFL game, about 17,000 viewers, a playoff game, 17 million viewers, a playoff game, about 40 million. What does that mean for gambling? Is the playoffs just from the beginning to the end? Is that really where a lot of these companies are going to make the bulk of their revenues throughout the year?
Yeah, so the way we actually look at it is the start of the NFL season is the most important customer acquisition period of the year. And as the year goes on, it becomes a little less and less. But come NFL playoffs, it kind of comes back to that becomes an important customer acquisition period again. You just have, high risk, high reward games. You have more people entering the fray. And that's kind of when some of this marketing and free spend starts to come back. And it's kind of the last push before the NFL Super Bowl. So, I'd say the whole NFL season is important for these companies, but the start of the season and the playoffs is definitely some of the most important time to acquire and retain some of these players.